Hello everyone, it's Shannon here. Thank you so much for joining me today. In this video, we are going to do a 2-for-1 project. We're going to create these 2 colorful star cards using the new Nesting Stars die. For this project, I'm going to use some colored paper. I'm going to use these awesome pads from Waffle Flower. They're half lines pads. I have the Unicorn Botanical Enchanted pads here. As you can see, the half pads are 5.5 by 8.5, and you can just cut them in half and you have 2 A2 panels, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to cut these panels that are striped and solid and just use the solid halves. So these 4 colors I got from the Unicorn half lines pad. These 2 are from the Botanical half lines, and the last orange is from the Enchanted half lines. So I also took 2 white A2 panels and die cut them with a stitched border just to add a detail, and I'm going to start with one and use the new Nesting Stars die set. This set comes with several stars dies, as you can see here. I'm going to use all of them except for the largest one, which I just put aside just because it's a little bit too big for creating a shaker, which is what we're going to do for our first card. So I grabbed the second largest and centered it on my white stitched panel, and I ran it through my die cutting machine. Now that I've ran that through, I'm going to just put the star aside and I'm going to keep the negative. I'm going to grab my first panel, because I have these panels now in rainbow order, as you can see on the left, and I am going to position that star, the smaller star, right inside the larger one. Use a piece of purple tape to hold in place and then run it through my die cutting machine. This time, however, I am going to keep that red star as well as the negative. So the negatives are going to be used to create our shaker, and the star die cuts are going to be used to create our second card. So I'm going to continue through this process, each time getting a smaller star, centering it in the negative from the panel before, and then running it through my die cutting machine. So I just finished with orange here. Now I'm going to use the orange panel and die cut this yellow or really chartreuse panel. So once I got those 2 panels lined up, I then grabbed the smaller die, positioned it, and ran it through my die cutting machine. And now I'm working on this really pretty kind of aqua color. Again, centering the next smallest die in the opening, using a piece of purple tape to hold it down, and then run it through my die cutting machine. And I do like to stop periodically and just kind of stack them all up like you see me doing here, making sure that they are all nice and centered and aligned properly. And once I did that check, I just continued on through the process. Die cutting this really pretty blue now with the next smaller, and then I'm moving on to this last piece of blue. This is the final panel I'm actually going to die cut, because the purple panel will be the back, so it won't be die cut with a star. So I just finished die cutting that last little tiny star, and now I'm ready to kind of stack them all up so you can see the beautiful transition or rainbow of colors here. And there's a lot of depth. It's kind of hard to tell right now, but because we're stacking all that cardstock on top of each other, we're creating some dimension and basically creating our well for our shaker, so our sequins can kind of shake inside. So I really quick die cut one more star out of some purple cardstock. I just felt like I needed to have one more bigger star to fill up my card to fill up the front of my second card. So now I'm going to kind of put together this shaker card. So I have an A2 panel of acetate here, and I'm going to first adhere this onto my white panel. I'm going to use a tape runner here and add tape all to the back side of my panel. The reason why this panel has grid lines on it is just because I'm recycling some white cardstock here. Once I get that covered with the adhesive, I'll just place it down on the acetate and then I'll set that aside. Now it's time to actually adhere all these negatives together. I'm going to start with the bottom, essentially start from the bottom and work my way up. Again, I'm using a tape runner here and just adding adhesive to the back side of each one of these colored panels and then just lining it up. I do think if I as you see, I'm kind of holding the panels upright when I do kind of line the panels up. I found that kind of helps to make sure the bottom is nice and square and I get my panels perfectly lined up. So that helped a lot. Again, just continuing to work my way through each one of these panels, building this well and creating the rainbow. I really like this technique. It's not the first time that I've created a shaker card using nesting dies and stacked cardstock. I just think it's a really fun and unique way to kind of use those nesting dies and a unique way to create a shaker card as well. So I'm just finishing up here by adhering my last panel on top, and that will complete my well for my shaker card. You can see we have that beautiful rainbow, and now we are ready to fill this. So instead of using sequins, I'm actually going to use some really tiny star confetti. And another bonus of creating these stacked cardstock shakers is that they don't really require much to fill. You can just use a little sequence or a little amount of confetti to kind of fill it up. So I'm going to now add some adhesive to the back side of my front panel, and once I get that adhesive down, I can then kind of sandwich all that confetti inside my little shaker well, and that front is basically done. All I have left to do is a sentiment. You see we got a lot of pretty sparkle from those iridescent stars, and I just think it's a really fun shaker card. So now I'm going to move on to my stacked focal point. So I have all the stars that I die cut earlier, and I could just center these stars to create a more traditional stacked focal point, but I have been so inspired by Laura Basson's gorgeous stacked die cuts, and she kind of has these die cuts offset a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to offset these stars so they're kind of positioned to the upper right edge, and I think this just creates a really different kind of look. It has a more modern and just kind of a fun feel. So now that I have all my die cuts in place, I'm ready to adhere my star to my panel. So this is the second white stitched panel. I just added some adhesive to the back of that star and centered it and then stuck that down. Now that this is stuck and adhered, this is also ready for a sentiment. So I'm just going to put that aside and now stamp my sentiment. This is the Magnolia stamp set. I'm going to stamp this happy birthday sentiment. It's a nice solid stamp, kind of looks like a label. I've positioned it here in my MISTI, and I'm going to ink it up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink and stamp it. Now that I stamped it once, I'll stamp it a second time, so I have two happy birthdays. I'm now going to trim these down to create a really thin sentiment strip. And now that my sentiments are done and ready to go, I'm ready to bring these cards all together. So I have two A2 top folding white card bases. The first thing I need to do is just add some liquid glue to the front of these and just adhere my panel. So I'm going to start with my shaker card, just center it and stick that guy down there. Nice thing about that liquid adhesive, it does give me a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I get that panel perfectly centered. I'm going to repeat this for my second card. So again, add that liquid adhesive and then grab my panel and just stick it right down onto the card front. With my panels now adhered, I'm now ready to stick my sentiments down. This first sentiment is basically going to go right over the stacked stars. So I really just needed a little bit of liquid glue in the center of the sentiment and then two little foam squares on the end to kind of support it, and that will complete that card. And for my shaker card, I'm just going to add foam squares all along the back side of my sentiment, then just remove the backing, and then I will position this directly onto the shaker window, and that will complete that card. And I'll hold these cards up to the camera so you get a good look at these 2-for-1s. Here is our shaker card. This is the one that started the whole process because I just love creating these negative stacked shakers. I think they're so fun. And this star is just, I couldn't resist doing it with these nesting star dies. And here's our fun like second or bonus card that we created with the leftover positives of the stars, and all stacked up a little bit to the side to kind of create a unique and modern look. I hope you guys enjoyed today's cards and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please check out the links below in the description. And if you liked this video, I'd so appreciate it if you would subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful day.